right, folks, so we are starting our rabbit dissection. So you should have a rabbit, it looks like this, in a bag. You also should have a tag that looks like this. So, important thing before you do anything else, take your tag and you need to write your name and your rabbit's name on here. Yes, your rabbit's name. This guy is going to be your friend for a few lab periods, so we need to have a name. We can't just call him Rabbit. So please make sure that you correctly identify your rabbit as well as your name here. Now, if you're thinking you're going to find your rabbit's name somewhere on the plastic bag, you won't. Just give him a name, okay? And once you have that done, we're going to move on to the next step. All right, folks, so I know for many of you this may be your first dissection. So we need to, for some of you, talk about how to make your scalpel work, because you may have something like this that does not look like a usable scalpel, because you probably also have something like this, and this contains your scalpel blade. So first of all, we're going to look at this, and you see on one side there's kind of a space, and the other side is completely smooth. Okay, the side that has this space also has a lip. You see that, those ridges there. This is the side we want to use. Okay, now your blade is in here. A lot of students make this mistake and they just rip this out and they take their blade out and then they cut themselves. You're just going to, one of the sides is going to peel open like that so that it goes like this. That's the side you use. You're going to peel it open, peel it back like that, and you're not going to take the whole thing out. You're going to leave it in there, okay? Now, you need to expose this portion here that has the hole. But once you get to the bottom of the hole, stop. Do not continue, okay? The hole is all we need. This allows you to hold on to the blade end without cutting yourself, okay? Now, these grooves here are how we're actually putting these things together. So, you're going to take the groove there, and you're going to poke it up to slide it into the skinny part. You see there's a skinny part and a large part. You're going to poke it up so it goes into the groove, and then press it down. And you heard that click? When it clicks, it's now in place. You can go ahead and pull it out, and you now have a functioning scalpel blade, okay? Now, let's note, do not throw this foil away, because when you're done, you're going to clean your scalpel, you're going to dry it out, and then you're going to place it back into the foil. Now, you could take it back off of here, but that's more work than necessary. All you need to do, once it's dry, is close this back around, and then you can use it next time. Obviously, if you were, working in a hospital or something, you wouldn't be reusing these things like this. It's disposable. But for our purposes in this class, as long as you dry it properly so it doesn't get rusty, you can just leave it like this in between dissections, and that way you can use the same blade each time. All right, let's go ahead and continue. All right, folks, so we have our identification taken care of. So next, we need to go ahead and open up the rabbit. So we're going to need your scissors, and make sure you are doing it on this side. So go ahead and cut open the plastic over on this side here. And when you open it up, you're going to find out that there is a second bag inside. So go ahead and slide that first bag off. Just put this off to the side, okay? It is not dirty. It does not need to be put in anywhere safe because it didn't have any embalming fluid. This one is sealed, and this one will be dirty. So we're going to go ahead, same deal. We're going to cut it open. And this end can just go into the regular trash. And then we're going to open up the end and slide as best as possible our rabbit out of the bag. All right. So this one, do fold it up kind of like that so that the opening is there, and then just put it off to the side. So, our rabbit right now is sitting on the dorsal aspect. So So this means the ventral aspect is forward. So this is his belly, this is his neck, and then his hind legs and his forelegs. We're going to go ahead and turn him so that we see his dorsal aspect. So this is his back. You can see his ears here, the back of his head, and his tail here. Okay, so we want to make sure we are oriented, and we're going to go ahead and put him on his back again. So the dorsal aspect is down, and we are looking at the ventral side. Okay, now our first big task is going to be to skin our rabbit. So we need to get rid of all of this fur. Some of you may have yellow looking rabbits like this one is. This is actually a white rabbit. It's yellow because of the preservative fluids that we've had to use. So it stains the white to a yellow color. Some of you may have black, some of you may have spotted, a few different things. Whatever it is, it's all still a rabbit. So what we're going to go ahead and do is, if you've ever watched television and they are doing an autopsy in some sort of, crime show, you do a Y incision. So you're going to do an incision straight down the abdominal cavity, and then you're going to go across to the arms, and that's why they call it a Y. But we're also then going to extend to the legs, and the goal here is to take off the skin and the fur, but we're going to leave the muscles intact, which means you do not want to cut too deeply. If you cut too deeply, we're going to cut into the muscles, and it's going to confuse what we're trying to see. Okay? So I do want to point out, you see this string here, and there's some string here. Many of your rabbits will already have been cut open in the abdominal cavity and then roughly sewn back together with a thick cord or string. So as you're cutting, you may run into that. Just be very careful, okay? Now, we're going to start our cuts with our scalpel. And so what we want to do is pull up some of the fur around the throat, stick our scalpel through, and just make a single cut, okay? Now I want to show you, it's not big. You see that little thing there? That is not large at all. All we're trying to do here is give us an opening, okay? Now, to use that opening, we are going to have our scissors. And we're going to put our scissors in, and we're going to cut across to extend that out this way. Now the reason we're using our scissors and not our scalpel is because our scalpel is more likely to actually cut into the muscles that we want to keep intact. And so we don't want to do that, okay? So I've cut across that way, and now I'm gonna get my scissors in this way, and I'm just going to cut down his abdominal cavity, okay? Now this is gonna take me a while. I'm just going to make a straight cut all the way through. So I'm going to let you guys go for a second, and then when we come back, I will have finished that cut. All right, folks, so I just want to show you, I've been making the cut down, but I've gotten to the part where that string is that we talked about. And so you're going to have a hard time, and so if at all possible, get below the knot and just snip that string out like that, okay? So now I have the string out of there, and then that's going to allow you to continue through a little bit better. If you don't do that, you're going to have a really hard time. Once you cut the knot, you can try grabbing the string from the other side and pulling. It may or may not come out. Mine's pretty stuck, and so I don't think it's going to pull out with the yank. But you're just going to have to do your best as you're making it through this particular region. Okay? So again, I'm going to continue with this, and I'll see you in a sec. All right, folks, so we've extended the cut all the way down, and what we're going to do now is pull the skin back, and you can see I have moved this portion, and you can see some connective tissue there. This is all done with your fingers. Don't get your scalpel or anything involved. With your fingers, as you pull, use some traction, and just lightly break that connective tissue. This connective tissue is called fascia, okay? And you're just going to break it with your finger as you're adding traction. And in doing so, you're going to be able to pull the skin back, okay? And so our goal here is to keep as much of the muscle tissue on the rabbit as possible. We are going to probably lose some of the superficial muscles as we're going onto the skin. That's okay. We can still look at them that way. But we want to, as much as possible, keep stuff intact. All right? So the goal is we're going to go ahead and skin it all so the skin is flapped over on both sides, and then we'll be right back. All right, folks, so you can see that I've skinned this area and the flaps are on either side here. You'll also notice on some of these portions that there may be some muscle tissue. For instance, right here, you see how there's this muscle here, and then this portion looks like it's broken off, and there is some here. So I have lost a little bit of muscle tissue there. It's not a huge deal, but we want to limit that as much as possible. So I have gone as far as I can on this side. I can continue to pull on the dorsal side and move it around. I have cut around the arms and legs on both sides. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I am going to flip him towards the dorsal side, and then I'm going to extend those cuts around his hips and shoulders so that I can go ahead and pull off the skin around his torso in hopefully one big piece. Okay, so I'm going to work on that, and I'll see you in a bit. All right, folks, so I've made the cuts around his hips, and I'm able to pull this up. Again, you can see this is some of the muscle tissue here I've lost. Not a huge deal. Some of the most superficial muscles we weren't ever going to be able to identify anyways, but we want to be as close as possible. Now, as I'm pulling up in here and getting some of this out, you can see that there's some structures kind of in my way. These actually are his shoulder blades, otherwise known as his scapula, right? So these are his scapula here, but superficially, we have his ears up here. Now, I know this is probably going to be the most emotional part for most of you, but we're actually going to cut his ears off, okay? They're in the way. So we're just going to cut right across there, taking off his ear. And this is just going to open up the area for us so it's easier to finish the skinning process, okay? So we're going to just finish this up, and we're going to be able to get about there, and then we'll just do one last cut with the scissors right across, and we're going to go just above the scapula so we can see all of that. And now we have one messy pelt here, and we can see most of these structures very nicely, okay? So what we will need to do is some of this stuff down on the hips and legs is going to need to go as well, and a little bit more here as well. So we want to get to the elbows and knees on both sides. So you're probably going to have to do just a little bit more rough dissection and pulling this down, trying to keep the muscles as much as possible until you get down to the knees, and then up here to the elbows, we got pretty close, but we'll have to do just a little bit of touch-up here. So I'm going to do that final touch-up and see you back in a sec. All right, folks, so I have finished the skinning process. I do want you to notice here, I have pulled the skin up, and it is still on the forearms and paws. Same thing down here. You are welcome to completely cut it off and take it off like this pelt over here. It's just not necessary, and so I just like to pull them that way, and that way I don't have to worry about it as much. But it is totally up to you. So we are looking at the dorsal aspect right now, anterior side where the head is and posterior side where the tail is. I would like you to notice I have cut around the tail. The tail is still here and does still have fur. However, if you have taken off the tail, or if you'd like to take off the tail, that is fine. I just didn't need to take it off, so I left it be. And so as I mentioned before, you have your scapula here. And then as we're coming back this way, we can see that, as I mentioned before, the abdominal wall had previously been opened and it had been put back together with the string. And essentially we have our forelimbs and our hind limbs over here. Now, the next aspect that we need to do is we need to look at the musculature. I don't love using these guys for musculature because, as you can see, he's fairly dry, and so his muscles are difficult to define. Also, because he is a rabbit, he does have certain muscles that are different than ours, and even the ones that are the same do look slightly different. But we're going to talk in general here. You see all of this connective tissue. I'm pulling up on it here because we do still have some fascia, and that fascia is covering and protecting the muscles. So I'm pulling these up so that I can see the individual muscles a little bit better, okay? And so in doing so, I can see now that this here is one muscle. So I'm going to try to define it a little bit better and pull up a little bit more of this. And I'm just doing this with my probe instead of my fingers because my fingers are going to be a little too blunt. And I need a little bit more here. Okay. And as I'm doing that, you can see that there is this muscle here and this muscle here and another one here. And they're all separated from one another. Okay. So, all right. So essentially, once you can see individual muscles, you want to try to roughly define which muscles are which, okay? So you can see this muscle here is running on the inner portion of the thigh, and then this muscle here is running from the inner portion of the thigh out to the knee towards the lateral portion, okay? And so you need to think to yourself, on a human and the models that we have looked at in humans, which muscle is the medial muscle on the inner portions of the thighs? I think I tell you in another video that these are the ones that if your thighs are touching, they are rubbing together. So what muscle would this be? The gracilis, right? Your gracilis is your chub rub muscle. These are your thighs rubbing together, your gracilis. Then this one, it's going from the medial aspect, it's going across the thigh and attaching over on the lateral side of the knee. So what muscle is it that we've talked about that makes that movement? It moves across the thigh almost like a seatbelt. Sartorius. Good. You guys got this. All right. So we can roughly see that based on positioning, those are two of the muscles that we have previously talked about in this class. Okay. Now, there are a ton of muscles in the legs that look very different, but what I want you to do right now is just look around on your rabbit. We have the hind legs, the forelegs, the abdominal wall, the posterior aspect. Look around in all of these places and try to define different muscles, okay? For instance, you can see very nicely here on the posterior aspect of his forearm that there are two different things here. We put our probe in between and you can see that there is a division here between these guys. Now, since it's on the posterior aspect, the bone is right here. You can feel the bone very well right here. This is the posterior aspect, and we're seeing a few different pieces here. Any thoughts on what muscle this might be? Triceps brachii. Good. Remember, tri means 3. So the reason why we're seeing two different things here is because these are 2 of the 3 heads of the triceps brachii. And so essentially what you need to do right now is take what you know from the models and the diagrams we've already gone over and try to extrapolate that onto your rabbit. Okay, so spend some time, try to identify at least 10 muscles, all right? I'll be coming around and helping you out. See you soon.